Hi everyone, I'm Linda Loveland here with Jake Parker, General Counsel for NC Farm Bureau. Going to talk about a big decision that just came down a couple weeks ago regarding the U.S. Supreme Court and Proposition 12, upholding Proposition 12, California's rule talking about confinement, animal confinement. And that is a decision we've been waiting for, and one we didn't like getting.
Yeah, it was a tough one. Not a great day. I'd rather do these conversations when we win. But yeah, the U.S. Supreme Court upheld Prop 12, which is a law that California enacted through its voters, not through its General Assembly, several years ago. And the idea and the point behind it was to regulate animal housing for swine. And the stick, so to speak, was if you're not meeting California, if other producers are not meeting California standards and you can't sell pork into California, that's certainly going to have a big impact on the national pork market and certainly North Carolina farmers.
Absolutely. So what does this mean? Everybody's asking, like, what does this mean for North Carolina hog farmers?
Yeah, it's tough to figure that out right now. What happened was American Farm Bureau and National Pork Producers Council filed a lawsuit in California's federal district court saying this law violates the Commerce Clause of the Constitution, and the Supreme Court disagreed. So now we have to figure out what we do.
And this was something that everyone was getting behind too. American Farm Bureau was behind it, National Pork Producers and all that. So
we filed
a brief with it as well. So everyone has just kind of been left reeling from this, really, because there's so much to this. There's so much to peel back and decide how to proceed on this. So I guess in the meantime, we're just sort of in a holding pattern in a sense, right? Because California's not ready to start enacting it.
Yeah, and it's probably helpful for us to talk a little bit about what the Supreme Court said in that there are 9 justices on the court, and typically what will happen is they'll take a vote and decide how they want to write an opinion, and usually it's one opinion or it's two, a primary or a majority opinion where 5 to 6 justices, 7 sometimes unanimously every now and then, they'll write an opinion, and that'll be the law that governs. And then you have a dissenting opinion as well. This opinion had 5 different opinions, and you remember when we talked last, the court, even at oral argument, wasn't really clear on what it wanted to do. So what you got out of the court wasn't really clear. It's not real clear what you can do and what you can't do under the Supreme Court's decision.
Is that unusual though, with 5 dissenting opinions?
It's not uncommon. It's not the norm, but it happens from time to time. And in this case, you had 3 justices who said the theory that Farm Bureau and National Pork Producers Council was presenting, this dormant Commerce Clause theory, doesn't exist or it's not workable. And then you had 2 other justices who said, well, we don't think Farm Bureau pled enough to show that there was harm. And then you had 4 other justices who said there is plenty here, let's let the case move forward. So it's just a mess of a case. But again, the result was California Prop 12 is in effect, and it's not going to be blocked anytime soon. So back to the question you asked, what do we do? Some farmers and the pork processors are going to have to figure out, do they want to go into California's market? Even if do they not want to change and just let California's market go? There's some economic risks that go into that. It's 13% of the nation's pork consuming public. So
good job.
That's a lot. The cost to comply would be substantial. So do you want to do that? And farmers will be the ones on the hook for that probably. We could always go to Congress, but I don't know that we can trust that Congress would actually solve the problem. I think there are a lot of people that would recognize it, but then you'd have others that kind of are okay with what California's done. So I don't know that Congress will solve it. And then there's the question, can state legislatures step in? And I don't know the answer to that yet. We'll have to work with our lobbying team and think about whether that's something that's even doable.
So there are options in the meantime, things to look at, but this is kind of just a time to sort of soak all this in and figure out what our options are specifically and how we proceed.
I think that's exactly right, Linda. It's worse sometimes when you take a loss to learn a little bit from it and think through what are some ways to react and how do you, the industry's not going away in North Carolina. It's really important to the culture of the state, one, but also economically. There are a lot of people, not just farmers, our members, but other people who depend on that industry in the state. And so it's worth taking some time to think about, okay, well, what do we do? How do we deal with this issue? And hopefully, one good thing that came out of the opinion was, or the court case was, Justice Kavanaugh wrote a dissenting opinion that relied heavily on some of the ideas we presented in our brief to the court. He actually cited our brief in his dissent. And he said there are some other ways in the Constitution to get at this, which was the point of our brief. We argued that just the fundamental structure of our Constitution should stop California from doing what it's doing. So Justice Kavanaugh maybe laid out a little bit of a roadmap, but it's going to take a while for somebody to think through, how do we file that lawsuit? Where do we file it? How do you get it all set up? And it could be years before you actually get a ruling on that issue too. So it's not like, there may be some options legally to deal with the problem, but it might take a little while. So the main question is, what do you do in the short term? And like you said, I think it's worth reflecting on that and thinking through a really smart strategy.
A legal strategy always takes a long time, certainly. So in the
It
short
does.
term, for all the farmers who have hog houses and all that, it's just going to have to kind of sit back and wait and just kind of see what sort of unfolds at this point while it's all being worked out behind the scenes. Really.
Yeah, I really wish we had better news, but we don't. Sometimes, as we've talked about before, litigation can go in your favor. It can also go against you, and unfortunately, this one didn't go our way. But we'll get our way through it. I know our farmers are resilient.
Yeah.
They're creative. I know they'll work their way through it.
And there are a lot of great legal teams out there who are also working on this. Between us, you, Jake, and you said the Supreme Court Justice actually cited some of our brief. So we've also got American Farm Bureau, National Pork Producers. So there are a lot of big groups that are working together.
I would say a shout out to the North Carolina Chamber, the North Carolina Pork Council, North Carolina Retail Merchants Association. They all joined in, and we had 19 other state farm bureaus and pork councils join in on that brief as well. So we pulled together as a team. I just wish the result had been different.
It's a joint effort for sure. All right. Well, thanks for the update, Jake. We appreciate it.
Anytime. Thank you.